Hello and welcome to Gazzetta Football Korea, your beginner's guide podcast all about South Korean football. I'm your host, Martin Jones. With me today is Korean football expert Tom Clark. All right, Tom?
Hi, mate. How are you?
Not too bad, you?
Yeah, all good. Surviving the heat wave. It's probably nothing compared to what Korea's got, but it still feels pretty damn hot here.
What do we have for you this week? Well, we had controversial red cards in the big clash between Jeonbuk and Pohang and the game between Suwon Blue Wings and Daegu. We had late drama in Gangwon versus Sangju. Also, Incheon with a big chance to get their first win of the season in their home game against Gwangju. Could they do it? Stay listening to find out. We'll also preview Gameweek 15 and a juicy clash between Daegu and Jeonbuk. First of all, though, we mentioned the FA Cup in the last pod. It was the quarterfinals midweek. Your results in those quarterfinals: Jeonbuk 5, Busan 1. Jeonbuk getting 4 goals just in the second half in that game. Songnam 1, Suwon 0. FC Seoul 1, Pohang Steelers 5, and Ulsan 3, Gangwon 0. So I guess, Tom, no real upsets in there.
No, Songnam with a 1-0 win over Suwon. That's not an upset, I don't think, based on this season's form and the league table. Suwon probably would have been slight favourites, but not by a large amount. And I guess, Songnam have had a pretty solid defence this season, so a 1-0 win is just about right for them. It'd be very tough for Songnam against Jeonbuk in the semi-final, but one-off game, you never know.
Yeah, it is a cup. Yeah, magic of the cup. Who knows what's going to happen? So yeah, Jeonbuk take on Songnam, as Tom mentioned. The other semi being Ulsan versus Pohang. So this meant that we had the current top 3, or at least the top 3 in K1 going into this weekend's game in the semis. In terms of the Champions League and what that means for that, well, if one of the top 3 wins, so kind of ruling out a Songnam win, the Champions League spots will go down to 5th if Sangju were to finish where they are in 4th. So that means either Daegu or Pohang getting into the Champions League as well, which seems about right, seeing as we've got a real kind of top 5 in K1. Tom, I think, do we know when the semis are going to be played at all?
Yeah, the info that I've managed to find, it says October, which seems like a long way away. I know we're beginning of August now, so it's 2 months. But I think it's towards the end of October, so 2.5 months, which is a long time to wait. But I think, and again, I'm just assuming this, but I think it's because they were the original dates for the semi-finals before COVID and the league change and everything. So I'm assuming that had a regular season taken place, the games might have been more spaced out and without this big gap between quarterfinals and semi-finals. But it seems a bit strange, and it does mean that all 4 teams could be in a completely different place in 10 weeks' time. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. You're probably looking at Songnam and Pohang as the underdogs here, and probably for Pohang, it's a good thing because Ulsan are flying at the minute. So maybe in 8 weeks' time, Pohang might have picked up some form, and Ulsan might have dropped off a little bit from the level they're at the minute. I mean, for Songnam, it's going to be a tough game whenever they play against Jeonbuk, but it'll be fun when we get to it. And I think Pohang really, I mean, all teams want to win it, but I think Pohang really need to go all guns for the cup because they're the one out of the 3, okay, if we discount Songnam, which is a little unfair, but if we do discount Songnam, I think Pohang are the ones who might not get Champions League spot through the league. So I think they need to rotate with the cup in mind come October. And I think it would be very important for Pohang to win the cup.
And hopefully by that point as well, we'll have stadiums full of fans, which is kind of befitting an FA Cup final. We had the English FA Cup final, of course, we kind of got used to it with the Premier League games. And you kind of get used to those banners around the edge of the pitch, and the camera shots deliberately don't go too high. But it's hard to show Wembley without showing all of Wembley. It just looked absolutely cavernous. It was so strange watching that.
Yeah, the cup finals and the playoff finals, it's not been the same. I mean, the championship playoff final is coming up on Tuesday, and I probably would have been there with some of the work I do with Brentford. So it would have been, so I'm really gutted not to be able to go to that, because the cup finals are great and stuff, but they, I have been to cup finals before, and it's a huge amount of corporate at the FA Cup final, and actually quite a small amount of fans from either side. The League Cup final is actually, you get much more fans going in than you do for the FA Cup final. But the playoffs are brilliant, because they are just nearly all. It's not 50-50. It's maybe 40 to 45% each for the clubs, and then 10 to 15, 20, whatever percentage of corporate. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what it will be like for the Korean Cup final. I wouldn't have thought they'll be at the stage where they can let all the fans in. I think what has been said for the remainder of the season, that it will stay at just this low 10% level or so. But yeah, maybe there'll be some more in, and some is better than none.
Speaking of fans at matches, we had fans at K1 games this weekend for the first time ever. Well, certainly first time this season, at least, anyway, which was exciting. Tom, how did that go?
Well, it feels like forever, having them in. But yeah, the first time this year the first time this season for sure. And yeah, it was great to see them in there. And I noticed that the artificial crowd noise had stopped, and you were hearing not huge chants or anything, because also I don't think people want to be shouting and screaming. I'm probably told not to. I'm pretty sure the information given out to fans has been, no singing, no chanting. But, it's that unconscious reaction that when your team score or when they come close, that hey or something. So, there was that. You could hear that with the fans. Yeah, so it was really good to see them. One of the games I was watching was quite funny, actually. At the half-time, the Korean TV presenter, she went up into the stand to talk to fans. It was quite odd because, she had her mask on, as all fans were told to. But this boy, and I assume it was a boy just from the size and from the way he was talking, but this boy who was being interviewed, he didn't have a mask on. He had decided to wear a brown paper bag over his head with holes cut for his eyes, and then he'd drawn on a big smile. Strange folk down in Busan.
Yeah, I saw that. That was brilliant. I couldn't work out what the context was.
Taking that interview, for example, she was interviewing this boy, and in the background, you could see people walking behind to go out the stadium, and I don't know, I assume to the bathroom. I don't think they're being sold any food or drinks at the stadium. Maybe people just stretching their legs or something. But everyone is socially distanced where they're sat, but then they're all just walking out together next to each other. And you assume not everybody drove to the ground, so people would probably leave and go and get on public transport and sit next to each other. I mean, I totally understand that the football clubs have to do what they do, and walking out of the stadium stood next to somebody is very different to sitting next to somebody for 90 minutes. But yeah, no, it's just great to have fans in, and I'm very jealous of people who've managed to get to games.
I think a lot of it's just the perception, really, because I think football clubs are really cautious. Football clubs are all over the place, really just cautious about being seen to be doing too much too quickly, I think. So at the beginning of Project Restart in England, there was a lot of kind of hand-wringing about it. But then when football did actually restart, football kind of looked quite tame, really, in comparison with what was going on in the wider community. So could be the same thing here.
Yeah, right.
In terms of other news, though, I think we had another managerial casualty.
Yeah, so you're right, Martin. So yeah, it's FC Seoul. Choi Young-soo has resigned from his second spell in charge of the team, and yeah, so it'd be interesting to see who comes in, who takes control, and of course they've got Ki Sung-young there. So he's just signed for a club with a manager, and within a few days there'll be a new man in charge. Whether he knew anything about that or not, who knows? I'm just speculating. I would assume he's just a player who wouldn't have any idea. But yeah, and FC Seoul looks better for it this weekend, as we will get onto later.
Yeah, so there you go, listener. That's you caught up to speed with all the news and FA Cup action, and we'll crack on with our Game Week 14 recap just after this. Right, Game Week 14. We had some nice games here, some interesting games here at both ends of the table. Let's start on Saturday with Jeonbuk versus Pohang.
Yeah, and this is one that you caught, Martin. So, you've been watching the K-League now for half a season, so we want to hear more from you rather than just from myself and Yumi when she's available. So, So why don't you tell us about this game? I mean, Jeonbuk were second going into this. They back to winning weights last week after 2 draws and a loss. So, finally got another win on the board. I say finally, they got another win on the board. Pohang were third, unbeaten in 6th. Both teams scored 5 in the cup during midweek, so it was set for a good game. Previous one this season finished 2-1 to Jeonbuk thanks to an own goal and an injury time winner. So I think Pohang going into this knew that they could beat them or they could take something, but they didn't. It finished 2-1 again to Jeonbuk, and this time there was a controversial red card. Well, you say controversial. I'm going to disagree. I think it was a red card in this game.
Yeah, I'll come on to why it was potentially controversial, but that was the big talking point of this game. Much anticipated game, biggest game of the weekend. We had the Mad Green Boys back. Remember we spoke about them in our K1 intro pod right at the beginning of the season. The Jeonbuk fans. In terms of personnel, Palasevic again on the bench for Pohang coming back from injury, and Jeonbuk had their new signings Gustavo and Mo Barrow on the bench. Very good start to this game, very open and half chances for both sides. Keepers being called into action. Jeonbuk left back Kim Jin-soo rattled the crossbar with a free kick. Very good free kick. Keeper was beaten, nowhere near it.
Great free kick, wasn't it? It was, it could not, well, obviously it could have been better placed because it could have been the underside of the crossbar, but it was a really good free kick. I was, the minute he hit it, thought that was going in.
And it just made such a good sound when it hit the crossbar as well. Which
with no fake crowd noise, even though there were fans in there, you really heard it.
And Palacios, 5 minutes after that, he could have scored. He got on the end of a cutback from the left. Probably should have done better with that, but it was Palacios who was at the centre of the big talking points. About half an hour in, clearance from Pohang and Palacios looking to get on the counter attack, and he was just tracking the ball coming over his shoulder, eyes on the ball, and he went up to control the ball with his right foot. So his right foot was quite high. At the same time, Jeonbuk centre back Choi Bo-kyung, he came in to head it. Said Palacios leading with his right foot about shoulder level, and he caught Choi in the head. And there wasn't a tremendous amount of force. He wasn't kicking out, but Choi went down and did go off for repairs, but did come back on. And when I first saw it live, I could see it unfolding in slow motion as Palacios was running towards the ball, and I was just thinking, no, slow down. But he went up for it, and he caught Choi. So I was quite relieved when the referee gave a yellow at first, but then the referee got a shout in his ear, and it got upgraded to a red. And the reason why it was controversial, it just reminded me a lot of Nani's red card for Manchester United against Real Madrid in the Champions League in 2013, which is probably the only red card I can actually remember. You remember goals and things like that, but you don't often remember red cards. But I remember that one, and that was very controversial at the time. The decision was criticised quite a lot. However, the referees in the media were sticking up for the referee in the game, as was Roy Keane, funnily enough. And I think here, very similar action, but Palacios' contact on Choi was higher and a bit more forceful than Nani's on Arbeloa. Was there any intent on Palacios' part? No, I don't think so, but there doesn't need to be for it to be serious foul play under the laws. And the question is whether it was excessive force or not, which is potentially debatable. But when it happened and he went off, I was kind of thinking, I wonder if views have evolved and perceptions have evolved that this type of thing is now seen more as a red card in 2020 than it was in 2013.
I mean, I think it's a red card in 2013, a red card in 2020, a red card in 2030. It's a red card. It's endangering the safety of an opponent, which I think is one of the other, clauses in the law. I don't know if it was excessive force or not, but it was certainly endangering an opponent when your studs are getting somebody on the chin, and somebody who's 6 foot plus as well. It's not like he stooped down to waist height to put his head on it. He was pretty upright. It looked a red live to me. I was surprised that it was just a yellow. I agree there was no intent, but it was dangerous play. And I also, although I know what you're saying, Palacios was watching it come over his shoulder, but it wasn't like you see the reverse angle, and by the time he puts his foot there, he was looking straight. He was looking at the ball, but he must have seen Choi coming in his peripheral vision, surely, because footballers trained for these things to be aware of everything that's going on around you, and the guy was straight in front of him. I was shocked it was a yellow card. I just saw instantly live. I was like, well, that's a red card. What on earth is his foot doing up there? I mean, that's the other thing. It's like why he was trying to get it with his foot instead of waiting for it to fall or going in with his head. Yeah, I don't think there's any question for me anyway that it was a red card. The one question mark about it I do have is whether the ref upgraded from yellow to red on VAR's advice through his earpiece, because he didn't go to the monitor, well, that I saw anyway, or if he gave the red based on the reaction of the injured player and his teammates. And we'll see that later on with another game, a game today, and it wasn't a red card, it was only a yellow card, but it was very much, I watched it and think, you've only booked him because of either the seriousness of the injury or the player's reaction to the injury, not because of the foul. I don't know, maybe the ref just got the VAR in his earpiece just saying, you got that wrong, that's a red card, and he trusted him, so he didn't go and look at the monitor, or he saw that the guy's down, clutching his face, and thought, oh, maybe this is more than a yellow. I'm not sure, but either way, it was the right decision.
And we'll definitely come back to VAR monitor usage later on, like you say. But in terms of the game, I guess if your attacking midfielder gets sent off, that's probably the easiest type of red card to adjust to. So Pohang didn't make any subs, and they were just sitting back and looking to get to half time, which they did, and it went in 0-0. Second half, it was actually Pohang who took the lead, which was interesting. 10 minutes in, Song Min Kyu having a real breakout season for Pohang, the youngster. He started the counter-attack, and then the ball was cut back from the right, and it was Song on the edge of the box. His shot was straight at Jeonbuk keeper Song Bum Kun, but he let it go through his legs and into the goal.
I mean, it's just embarrassing. This guy is in goal for one of the best teams in Asia, and he does that. It's pathetic. I mean, it's so bad. Like, honestly, the only thing I can compare it to, I think, is probably Massimo Taibi off Matt Letizia, but worse. I genuinely think this was worse. It's so bad. It's 101 goalkeeping. Just put your legs behind the ball. I mean, I have my weekly or bi-weekly or fortnightly, whatever it is, rant on goalkeepers, but I'm kind of at a loss for words with this one. It's just so bad.
It was shocking. It wasn't like there were defenders in the way.
But there is no excuse. There is absolutely no excuse. Nothing to be said in his defence at all.
So that made it 1-0 to Pohang, and that seemed to spur the rest of his teammates into action, because 5 minutes later came the equaliser, and a lovely cross by Mo Barrow, who came on as sub just 3 minutes earlier from the left-hand side. I always had him in my memory as being a right winger, but he played it left-footed, so I don't know if he's actually a very two-footed player, or maybe I've just got that wrong. But Son Jun Ho breaking into the box from midfield, he found a yard and headed firmly past Kang for from 6 yards. Very nice goal, very Tim Cahill-esque, I thought.
Yeah, that was the first player I thought of as well. It was a really good goal. I love this goal, actually. The cross was just perfect, like perfect weight on it, perfect pace. It was curling, it was an outswinger, and it was such a good header. He was even better when you see the reverse angle, because it was both legs up in the air, like spread. He'd really got his whole body behind it, like his neck. There was a lot of power in the header. It was a brilliant goal, really good goal.
So that made it 1-1, and then Jeonbuk went on to get the winner 10 minutes later through Kim Bo Kyung, the other central midfielder. Jeonbuk, nice move, worked the ball into the box, and Kim passed into Gustavo's feet. Gustavo, the other new signing who came on as a sub, and he laid it off to Kim. Last season's MVP, hadn't done really too much this season, but he was in a lot of space on the end of Gustavo's pass, and he gave the keeper the eyes, as they say, and slotted it home.
Yeah, it's another great goal. Really slick one-touch move. Lovely football.
And that was kind of it for the game, really. Pohang didn't have enough in the tank to try and get back into it, possibly because of the cup games midweek, and Jeonbuk saw out the game pretty comfortably. But yeah, I mean, just going back to red card, it was a shame for the neutrals, I think, who will have wish that that incident hadn't happened, because we did have a good game on our hands at that point. And Jeonbuk may still have won, but it was very even at that point. They won't care though. I mean, they'll be happy with the 3 points and the win from behind. One thing I noticed with Jeonbuk, and I was looking at who scored for Jeonbuk, and they don't have anyone anywhere near the top goal scorers, but they do share the goals around a lot. And I checked this, and they had 10 different goal scorers in the league coming into this game, which was actually the highest in K1. And then Son Junho and Kim Bo-kyung, they both got their first goals of the season as well to take that up to 12. Also, nice impact from new signings, Barrow and Gustavo. They came on and got the assists. And Jeonbuk do like to work the ball into the box like they did for the second goal, but they've just been lacking somebody who can hold it up in the box. And Gustavo could be the missing piece of the puzzle. He's a strong guy. He attracts defenders. He's someone you can play off. So I think it's going to make the title race really tight if they can improve that aspect going forwards. As for Pohang, I mean, they'll be disappointed with the way the game went, but I think they'll just chalk it up to the red card and then they'll move on.
Yeah, absolutely. But I agree with Jeonbuk, and the two signings looked really good coming off the bench. It won't be long until they're in the starting lineup. Good signings, good players, going to make a big difference to them. Yeah, so that finished 2-1 to Jeonbuk, and it leaves Jeonbuk in second, but Pohang dropped down 2 places to 5th, which they won't be too happy with. That is their aims at the beginning of the season were the title or Champions League at the very least. So 5th is not good.
Also taking place on Saturday was Songnam at home to FC Seoul. Songnam were in 8th, coming off a win and 2 draws. Seoul were in 11th, 3 straight losses since their crazy 3-0 super match versus Suwon. Seoul needed to start picking up a few wins. Could they get anything here? Yes, they could, and they won 2-1.
Yeah, they looked a much better side this week. Maybe just having a different guy lead training or do the team talk, changes to the lineups, combination of all those things paid off. But also being gifted an opening goal really, really helps. And it wasn't a goalkeeping error. It was the Uzbekistani midfielder, Iskandarov. He was the man at fault for this one. He'd only been on the pitch not that long. He came on as an early substitute, and he played a blind back pass. He must have been 35, 40 yards out. I mean, it's a negative pass from that position anyway. He was being closed down, but he could easily have taken a touch and then looked for another pass. But instead, he just blindly hits it back to the goalkeeper, and he massively underhit it. And John Sung-hyuk, the goalkeeper started to come, but he realised he couldn't make it. And Yoon Tae-jun easily got round the keeper, and then just tucked it into the empty net. I'm not blaming John here at all. I mean, if you're really, really picking at things, you could say maybe he could have stayed in his box and then Yoon would have had to have beaten him with a shot rather than going around him. But that's being super picky. There's only one person to blame, and that was Iskandarov. Songnam had been playing okay, actually, I think, and they had a decent first half. And all their chances seemed to fall to Tommy Kiss, and great name that. And he was getting a start for once rather than just being used from the bench. He had a decent free kick and it was saved. He had another first half shot, which was easily saved. But he did get on the score sheet. He grabbed the equaliser just before half time, with not long to go at all. It was a lovely pass from Kim Dong-hyun over the defence. Lee Tae-hee did well to lob the goalkeeper from quite close range, who, the keeper should have stayed on his line. He shouldn't have been there to be lobbed, but, credit to E, it was a good lob. And Tommy was the first to react. Kind of seemed like he wanted it a bit more than the defenders, and he ran in between 2 defenders with no challenge and headed into an empty goal. The best thing about this goal was the crowd went nuts at the Tanchon, and the robotic magpie got to do its thing for the first time this season in front of a crowd. It rises up and the smoke billows out. It's a great look. But that was about as good as it got for Songnam. Yoon got Seoul back in front in the second half, and I am looking at the keeper this time. But first, we'll give Yoon some credit. It was a powerful shot from a tough angle through the defender's legs, but John was wrong-footed and beaten a bit too easily at his near post. You can kind of, especially from the reverse angle behind the goal, you can see he takes a step to his left, assuming that from that angle, if he's going to shoot, he's going to be one of those Harry Kane-style curlers into the back post, but instead he goes through the defender's legs and in at the near post. And I mean, I'm no goalkeeping expert, but they always say you shouldn't be beaten at your near post. And I think from the angle of the box, you probably shouldn't be beaten at the near post. But it was a good shot and it was powerful. It's probably slightly keeper missighted there with the defender, but I think he'll look at that and think he could have done better. It was a late barrage from Songnam. They had a chance. They had a few chances to get back in, mainly from corners and free kicks. They looked dangerous. We've mentioned before, Yang, up front, but also the defenders come up and they're good in the air. But they were unable to get an equaliser this time, and it was mainly down to some good defending, some good blocks, some good clearances, and right at the death, a combination of the keeper's hand and the bar. It was the 94th minute, and big centre back Yong Yi-won was up for a free kick. He got a good head on the ball. Keeper hand and the crossbar. I'm not sure, it might have been hitting the bar if the keeper hadn't got the touch. Obviously, he doesn't know, so it was a good save. It was one of those where it was slightly too close to him, so it was probably quite a comfortable save for him. It's a save that he still needed to make. And that was how it finished, 2-1. It was a much, much needed win for Seoul, but probably feels like 2 dropped points for Songnam.
Your final score there, Songnam 1, FC Seoul 2. Songnam dropped to 9th and Seoul stay in 11th.
Yeah, and then the final game of Saturday was Incheon versus Gwangju. Incheon are in 12th. 3 good draws against the top 5 teams, but still winless. Gwangju had dropped to 10th. Earlier in the season, in game weeks 5, 6, 7, they'd had 3 wins on the bounce, but since then it's just losses and draws. So, it was a big game for both teams here. And we had all predicted an Incheon to get something. I'd been conservative and said a draw, but obviously Yumi said a Incheon win, and Martin, you said an Incheon win too. And with 20 minutes to go, it was looking good. But of course, this is Incheon, and they threw it away and they lost 3-1.
Yeah, I was devastated after this game. I really was. Incheon keeper Jung San, he wasn't at fault for any of the goals, but we've got to mention him. And I don't know if Korean barbershops are opened again, but he's got this kind of long, big hair thing going on. It looks a bit like a Korean Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones. Every time I see him, that's what I think. But yeah, don't start me up on his performance, because he was all over the place on Saturday. And I don't know if he'd been on the brown sugar himself pre-game, because he made 2 big mistakes in the first half. One where he did a Taibbi cat flap, let the shot roll through his legs. Gwangju's Willian ran onto it and tapped the ball in, but Willian was offside. Another one, poor pass intercepted by Won Sang, the youngster for Gwangju, who I'll come back to shortly. He squared it to Felipe, who pretty much had an open goal, but he was off balance and shot wide.
I really am starting to become at a loss for words when talking about this goalkeeping, but we've seen this before from Jung, so it wasn't a massive surprise, but it's proper schoolboy stuff, and that's harsh on schoolboys. I look at him and I just wonder, how bad must Incheon's other options in goal be if he still playing for them? They must be atrocious if they cannot get a game in this team.
But it was Incheon who took the lead in the 23rd minute through Costa Rican midfielder Elias Aguilar. He picked the ball up on the right-hand side. There wasn't really much on in front of him, and he just kind of jinked inside as much to evade the defender as anything. He used his strength to hold off another one, and he found himself in the centre of the pitch, not too far out from goal. It seemed like several Gwangju defenders all just converged on him from all different angles, but he managed to get a shot off with his left foot. Not much backlift or follow through, but it still flew into the back of the net. So that made it 1-0 to Incheon, and that was the scoreline that they took into the half-time break.
Oh, I mean, it was a real quality goal, wasn't it? It's absolute beauty. One of the goals of the season, I think.
Yeah, so that was enough to give them 1-0. Not really much going on in the second half, although Incheon keeper Jung San, again, trying to liven things up 5 minutes in. He tried to do a little Harlem shuffle around Felipe, but he got tackled, and fortunately enough, it ended up going out for a goal kick.
How many more Stones references have we got coming?
Well, just have to see. But some more messing around by Jung 10 minutes later, and his poor pass to one of the defenders almost led to an own goal, in fact. And we've said in recent weeks that Incheon generally been making fewer defensive errors than they have been making earlier on in the season. But just watching the game, it's really felt at this point that the biggest threat to Incheon was actually Incheon themselves. And the rain was really hammering down at this point. And it was like the proper Korean rain that you mentioned couple of weeks ago, which can sometimes lead to mistakes. But with 20 minutes to go, Incheon were 1-0 up, and it looked like it could have been the beginning of an emotional rescue act for the Black and Blues. But 72nd minute, Onwon Sang, who had a good game for Gwangju, not a player I've really watched before, but promising youngster, picked the ball up in the centre of midfield and ran at the defence. And the Incheon back four, they just backed off him all the way into their own area. No one closed him down. We've seen this a little bit across the league, but I think I'm going to package up some highlights of Burnley defending and send it to them on a DVD, because they really should have done better there.
Do you think, like genuinely, do you think someone like, Sean Dyche or Tony Pulis, one of these top level managers who are famous for organising their defence, do you think they could make a massive difference considering the standard of players and, well, not to mention, let's just ignore the goalkeeping, but just the standard of the defenders, especially, say, someone like Incheon, who are so error-prone? I mean, you can only work with what you've got type of thing. I'm sure they would improve their organisation a bit, but I'm not sure how much they could actually change.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a cultural thing. I don't mean cultural in the broad sense, but in the cultural aspect, because each sports team has their own culture, and you hear about building up a good culture. And you see this with Saracens in rugby union. They've got this wolf pack mentality, particularly when they're defending. And you just feel they just need something a bit like that, really. Just something which they can rally around, just to start throwing their bodies on the line. Because you see it often with defending, particularly in the box. I don't know if they're just worried about giving away penalties, but you tend to see defenders backing off quite a bit and just looking to block the shot from a few yards rather than get beaten by the man. But yeah, that was the equaliser for Gwangju. And at this point, Gwangju seemed fairly content with a point and was sitting back. Incheon couldn't really break them down. One thing that K1 teams are good at, in my opinion, very good at, is counter-attacking. And then with 3 minutes left to go, that's what happened. Onwon Sang again for Gwangju. They counter-attack like wild horses. Clearance to Felipe, lovely first touch out to Willian, who squared it to Om. Om's first touch was very heavy, but he's a quick player. Yeah, and he just about left himself enough space to get onto the ball and knock it past Jung into the corner. No mistake by the keeper there. It was just a good counter-attack, and that made it 2-1 to Gwangju. And that really kind of knocked the wind out of Incheon's sails. And then in injury time, Felipe got a third for Gwangju, just rifled one in left-footed from outside the box. Nice clean strike into the bottom left corner. But it was a real hammer blow for Incheon. If they got a win, which was well within their grasp in this game, it would have seen them pick up a very respectable 6 points from 4 games and would have closed the gap a bit more on the rest of the league. And they would have had some momentum going into a winnable game against Songnam at home next weekend. Instead, just that 20-minute period at the end of the game, where it just kind of felt like their whole season collapsed, especially given Gwangju one of the teams they were chasing, and given that Seoul in 11th won as well. So, yeah, you'd I don't know, I'm probably being a bit melodramatic, and you'd be a fool to cry at this stage with games still to play, but I just felt so deflated for Uni and all the Incheon fans. And disappointing as a neutral as well, and with Sangju being relegated automatically regardless of where they finish in the league, and Incheon steadfastly staying in 12th. It means there's no real relegation battle, no real peril for the lower place teams. It's going to let some bad teams off the hook. But yeah, mixed emotions though, because they probably do deserve it. And if you blow a lead at home to Gwangju, then you're going to get what's coming to you.
I know. Just when we all had a little bit of hope for Incheon, I mean, you two even predicted a win, which is really stretching it. But yeah, just when we had a bit of hope, they go back to their old ways. So yeah, even though we had a bit of hope for them, they couldn't do it. And of course, it finished Incheon 1, Gwangju 3. Incheon stay in 12th, bottom of the league, and now 8 points adrift of FC Seoul in 11th. But Gwangju got the 3 points they needed and move up to 8th.
Moving on to Sunday, let's start with Gangwon versus Sangju Sangmu. Gangwon were in 6th. They've been slightly better defensively in their last 3 games, only conceding 2 goals. Sangju were in 4th and looking to bounce back from their 5-1 humbling by Ulsan. How did this one go?
Well, Gangwon took the lead after some strange defending, poor defending at a corner. Two Sangju players both went for the same ball, neither of them under pressure from an attacker, and it kind of bounced off both of them. I'm not sure which one of them actually got the final touch in the end, but it bounced off both of them and then went into the back of the net. It was just, you look at it and just think, well, this is clearly, it's just terrible communication. Either one of them could have cleared the ball easily. In the end, they both go for it, and it's not what you come to expect from a team like Sangju, actually. I mean, I know they conceded 5 last week, but generally they've been pretty tight at the back. So that was an odd one. And then not long after, there was a really horrendous looking head injury for Gangwon's Han Kuk-young. It was an accidental clash of heads, but it looked like he was out cold before he even hit the ground. Like their clash of heads was really powerful, but then when he fell, he properly smashed his head on the pitch. It was really horrible to look at. They showed a replay straight away, which, one replay was more than enough. It was awful. And you just tell from the players' reactions, the referee, everybody rushing to him before any of the medics could get there, how serious it was. All the players were visibly upset by it. Had to be taken straight off the pitch. An ambulance drove onto the pitch again. We've seen it once before this season with a head injury. So it looks like, the medical teams are all, very, very, very good and on the case. And hopefully it won't be anything too serious. But it really did look awful, and the TV cameras actually went into the crowd, and there was a woman in there who was, crying her eyes out. I don't assume it was a relative or anything. I think it was just a fan. But yeah, not nice to see. And this is going back to something we said earlier in the Pohang game, is the referee booked the Busan man Oh Se-hun. I mean, it was a really strange booking. It was a clear accident. They both just went up for a header, and it's a clash of heads. It's just one of those things. And you just look at it and think, well, the referee has clearly only booked him because it's a serious injury, which is completely wrong. That's not, you don't base a booking or a sending off on the outcome. You base it on the action, and the action was a completely accidental clash of heads, but, strange. And then one thing actually I found quite odd was IB Sports, the host broadcaster, actually showed the replay again at half time. It was part of their highlights package, which is completely bizarre. This has happened a couple of times this season where a really bad injury has been shown over and over again on TV. I find that quite odd. Like when it's, if it's a controversial red card where, like say Choi in the earlier game wasn't, seriously injured, you can see that again. But when it's a really horrendous looking injury, I don't get why the director. I don't get why the host broadcaster or the director would deem it necessary to keep showing it. But anyway, that's just a sidetrack thing. But yeah, it was horrible. Hopefully he's okay. There's a lot of first half subs in this game. There's 2 for Gangwon and 1 for Sangju, with only one of them looked to be from an injury. It's not something we've spoken much about, but there are an incredible amount of first half substitutions in K-League, and they're not all to do with the young player rule. Again, it's another sidetrack. It's not a major point, but it was just something I noticed once more. Sangju got level right at the end of the first half. It was Kimbo Sop, absolute belter, really beautiful strike into the top corner. There was no saving that. I can pick a lot of goalkeepers out for their problems, but not here. That was brilliant. Early in the second half, Kim Young-bin for Gangwon had a good chance from a corner. He really put his header straight at the man on the post. And I know we've got one keen listener who disagrees with me when I have talked about putting men on the posts, but this is another example to back me up. But Phil, if you're listening, please do get in touch and prove me wrong on this. But men on the post save goals. And it kind of seemed like the game was petering out for the rest of the second half. And in the 85th minute, I messaged you, Martin, and I said exactly that. I said, this looks to be petering out to a draw. I was thinking I might turn over to watch the end of the Suwon Daegu game because I had 2 on and that was the game I didn't. But I didn't. I stuck with it. And literally 5 seconds after I sent that message, Sangju counterattacked and scored. They picked the ball up in their own half, and Moon So-min, who was one of the subs from the first half I just mentioned, he rolled it into Kang Sang-woo, turned brilliantly, shot from the edge of the box, beat the keeper. It was perfectly placed into the bottom corner. Really good goal. And in my notes, I've written a goal worthy of winning matches, because it was late. And there had been nothing to suggest there were goals coming, let alone two of them in the last few minutes. But called that wrong. So just moments later, I thought Sangju had saved themselves. I thought Gangwon were going to get an equaliser, but the keeper was beaten, Kim Ji-hwak, who was wearing number 9, but he plays centre-back. He's that Chris Sutton, Gary Doherty type of player, centre-back / striker. But he blocked it with his knee on line, really good bit of defending, and then you think, right, this is a definite 3 points then for Sangju. And even more so after Gangwon had a man sent off. It was just a couple of seconds later after the block, there was a counter-attack. Second yellow card, stopping the counter-attack, pretty easy call for the referee, to be honest. It was, two yellows, both cards. It's one of those where he probably thinks when he's doing it, well, I'm taking one for the team here, knows he's going to get sent off. And it really is taking one for the team, because sometimes you think, you get that yellow card, second yellow card, get a man sent off and you still lose. And why did he do that? Well, he did it because he stopped Sangju from having a chance on goal. And Gangwon managed to get the equaliser. It was, some super, super late drama here. The 10 men equalised in the 93rd minute. There was, almost no time left on the clock. In fact, all there was time for was kickoff, and then the ref blew up. It's a perfect cross from the right wing from Kim Seung-dae, and Kim Ji-hyun rose highest to place a great header into the bottom corner. I think he was on the back of the fullback, which is why he was a bit taller than him rather than going up against a centre-back, because he rose really well, and he was, a solid foot above the defender to get his header in, but it was a really good header. So in the end, I was right with a draw, that I'd called at 85 minutes, but it didn't peter out into a draw. What's the opposite of petering out into a draw? Like pulling into a draw? I don't know, but whatever it was great fun 10 minutes, and it was a draw.
That's worse than my puns, I think. We've talked about how the defending can be patchy and the goalkeeper patchy. But to be fair, we've said counter-attacking is very good in this league. Yep. Lots of great efforts from outside the box. And another thing they do great in K1 is they do keep going. We have seen this where there's been not just one goal, but 2 goals late on in the game. But I want to come back to the red card. And this has happened a couple of times now to Sangju. Have they got a red card problem?
Yeah, I believe so. I think you put something out on Twitter, didn't you, Martin?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at the stats because it wasn't that long ago. It was the Incheon game where where Incheon had a player sent off, or in fact had 2 players sent off, but then Incheon equalised later on. So I looked at it. So Sangju have faced a team with a man sent off or 2 men sent off for a total of 45 minutes this season. And in that time, they've scored 0 goals scored, 2 goals conceded, 4 points dropped. Why is this? Is it just one of those random things?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess without going back and watching each individual goal, and it's hard to say. But yeah, it's a very good stat you've pulled up there. And yeah, I don't have an explanation for it, but it's if Sangju are aware of that, they'll be pretty concerned. It's yeah. I mean, you can say sometimes it's hard to score against 10 men. Maybe it shouldn't be against 9, but against 10, because normally teams put 10 behind the ball and try and defend and not concede. But yeah, to have conceded twice and to have dropped 4 points from it that's not good.
So your final score there was Gangwon 2, Sangju 2. Gangwon stay 6th and Sangju stay 4th. And they also have Busan and Seoul coming up. So they'll be looking to make more inroads at the top of the league. We
briefly just talked about one of the other games that was going on, because I thought I'd flick over and watch the end of this one, but I'm pleased I stayed with Gangwon Sangju. But there were a couple of other games going on. One that you were paying particular attention to was Suwon versus Daegu. So Suwon were in 9th. First match in their tricky 3-game spell that they had coming up. So it was a real test of the new manager balance, as they say. Daegu in 5th, back to winning ways last week after a couple of losses. Suwon had played midweek, so it is very, very hot. So you'd think there'd be a bit of fatigue, a bit of tiredness coming into this game, and also they didn't have a win midweek. They lost in the cup, so they'd be a bit down on that. Cup is a good chance for them, and Suwon's only chance of continental football this season. It's what they did last year, and they're not going to do it again this season. Of course, they lost that one to Songnam, and Daegu had the week off, and it was Daegu who got the win, but only just.
Yeah, only just. Only 1 goal in this game, but it was a really interesting game. A few chances for either side. At the beginning, Ryu Jae-moon had a good chance for Daegu after a cutback by Dejan Damjanovic, but he blazed it over. And then for Suwon, Park Sang-hyuk, central midfielder, nice one too with Adam Taggart to get into the box, but his shot was blocked. Taggart was involved probably more so than I've seen him in a lot of games. It seemed like a deliberate ploy because they're playing 4-1-4-1, so they were looking to get balls into Taggart and play off him because he does have a good touch. He was getting crowded out quite a bit early on, but he did start finding more space and bringing others into play as the game went on. But then Ko Sung-bum, almost the other central midfielder for Suwon, he almost got on the end of an effort as well. High, deep cross from the left-hand side, but just out of reach. And with only one man up front, it was a deliberate ploy and something they needed to do to get midfielders running into the box, and it almost worked for Suwon. But then a big talking point in this game, and again it was a red card, and again it was just after the half-hour mark. Completely different situation. I mean, it was very wet conditions. The red card was for Daegu, and it was their central midfielder Kim Sun-moo, and it was kind of a loose ball, and he slid along the ground. He got the ball, but then he carried on sliding, and he slid along with the ball into the Suwon right midfielder Han Suk-hee, and it seemed like he was sliding for about 10 minutes because it wasn't even a tackle. He'd already slid and got the ball, but then just carried on sliding into Han. And Kim's right leg was up, and he did go studs first into the Suwon player's shin, but it did feel a bit unlucky. I know it comes back to endangering the opponent, and you've got to take into account the conditions and adjust your actions accordingly. But it's a similar process with the referee as well. The referee gave a yellow, but then got a shout in his ear, upgraded to a red, didn't check the VAR monitor. Last week, I think you caught the game last week with the VAR monitor debacle at Daegu versus Busan, where the monitor didn't work. And I don't remember seeing any monitors being used this week. So it seemed like VAR was having a strong input into the decision, if not the final say.
Yeah, this was a strange red card, wasn't it? I mean, I caught it after the game, and like you say, I've never really seen anything like it before, but it's one of those things. His foot was high, I guess. When he's sliding for that long, maybe he could have made more of an effort to get it low. I'm not sure. I'm not sitting on the fence with this one.
Yeah, a bit of a, like so I think you summed it up perfectly. I don't remember seeing one like that either. To be honest, Kim possibly could have even got out of the way. It did look a little bit like he had a bit of time to move, but yeah, it was a red card. So Daegu were a man down. Cecilia went off for Daegu just before half time. It looked like it was an injury, so things getting worse for Daegu. Suwon bossing the possession at this stage as well. And in the second half, they could have gone down to 9, and I was surprised they didn't go down to 9 because Ryu Jae-moon went flying into a tackle, just kind of launched himself, missed the ball, got the man, but the referee didn't even give him a yellow card. I think he just gave him a warning. Ryu had been booked in the first half, so it would have been a second yellow and therefore a red. So that seemed a bit strange. But yeah, after that point, Suwon were trying to press home their advantage. Taggart headed just wide after a really nice cross from Yeom Ki-hun, left-footed midfielder playing on the right-hand side. It did look like Taggart was being barged by the defender. First glance, I thought the referee had pointed to the penalty spot, but he actually pointed for a goal kick, and attackers hardly ever get fouls given against them while they're shooting. But then Suwon just couldn't find enough creativity, invention to get the winner. And then on the 84th minute, Daegu almost snatched it. There was a cross shot parried by the Suwon keeper. I didn't see who it was, but Daegu attacker coming in at the far post probably should have done better. But then 2 minutes later, Daegu did snatch it. They did score. And it was a Brazilian striker, Edgar, who'd come on as a sub for Daegu, replacing Dayan, I think it was. And it was a nothing ball, really. It was just a long clearance. And Suwon had 2 players back, the 2 centre-backs, Daniil Henry and Min Sang-ki. And Edgar kind of out-muscled Henry. Nothing illegal whatsoever about it. He just did well to stay on his feet, and Henry actually slipped. But then Edgar took the ball into the box and just really nice curled finish into the top corner. But I really don't know what the other Suwon centre-back, Min, was doing, because it looked like he was just leaving Henry just to deal with it all on his own. And he almost just kind of stood off and watched it unfolding rather than trying to double up on Edgar, which I think would have been the obvious thing. So, yeah, I mean, it could have been tied. It was the end of the game. But yeah, a bit of a strange one.
Yeah, it was, because there was no other attacker. There was nobody else he needed to be looking for their run. So he should have just been over on the cover just in case. But I think, yeah, with this kind of goal, you just got to give the credit to Edgar. It was great. He was just too strong for Henry, turned him inside out. Yeah, he slipped, but he slipped because he was being taken left and right. And it was a quality finish as well. It was a goal worthy of winning a tight game. And bizarrely enough, this is Daegu's first win at Suwon for 18 years. So they'll be absolutely chuffed with doing it with 10 men. So that one finished Suwon 0, Daegu 1. And that sees Suwon drop to 10th. Up next for them is Ulsan and Jeonbuk. So I'm not sure how many points we see them getting there. And Daegu have moved up to 3rd after a good 1-0 win.
Let's move on to Busan iPark versus Ulsan Hyundai. Busan were in 7th. They were also on a tough run of 3 league matches, having been beaten comfortably by Daegu and also beaten comfortably by Jeonbuk in the cup midweek. Ulsan were in 1st, of course, just doing their Ulsan thing. Scored 5 last weekend against Sangju in the league, scored 5 midweek in the cup. Neutrals were probably just suspecting Busan, really just trying to avoid another hammering and get this week over and done with. But they put up a bit more resistance in this game.
Yeah, they did. They were decent. They didn't create a huge amount going forward, which we've said about Busan before, but in general, they had a good game. It was a much changed Ulsan side as well. Junior and Boltus being the main omissions, they're the ones that really stick out, but there are a few other changes as well. Not surprised that the boss is rotating. I mean, it is really, really hot and humid this time of year in Korea, and they did have a midweek cup game, but my surprise with the rotation was that it happened more for the league game than the cup, and it seemed that there was a stronger team playing in the cup, which is great. They're taking the cup seriously and wanting to win it, but I mean, and then 2 wins from 2 suggests the right decisions were made. So this was a close one, but 2 wins and get players rested. Yeah, it's worked perfectly. Busan, they did have their chances, and they had a great chance in the first half. It was against the run of the play, and it was Lee Dong-jun. He latched onto a ball over the top of the defence, but his shot was horrible. It was way over the bar. It's the basics: get your knee over the ball, get your head over the ball. He didn't do either of those, and it was a real wasted opportunity. And against a team as good as Ulsan, these chances like that, you just have to at least hit the target and make the keeper work. You can't afford to waste them. As we'll see later, it comes back to haunt them. But Busan also looks like it could have had a penalty in the 35th minute. It was a foul on the edge of the box, and it was seriously close to a penalty. It was, you're talking probably an inch, couple of centimeters, that type of thing, as to whether it was on the line, because on the line is in the box. And it was a quick VAR review. We didn't have to wait long, and it was deemed that it was, just outside the box. And the free kick, Homolu's free kick, came to nothing. It was comfortably cleared. But yeah, that could have been a real difference in the game if it had been given as a penalty and they'd scored. See if they'd have scored it. But it was super close. And yeah, also I think maybe Ulsan learnt their lessons that Busan weren't just going to roll over in this, so they had to start playing a bit more. And it was a really good Ulsan goal just before half time. It was a lovely chest and layoff from Big Bjorn, who'd got the start ahead of Junior, who I was a bit surprised to see him starting, because I thought he would have been more likely to play in the cup than in the league. But he hasn't had many starts, but he had a good game here. And it was a lovely layoff and a great finish from Jeonbuk and Pohang. Proper big man, little man link-up play between the two. And you see them celebrating, and the difference is a foot between them. But it was quality control, killed it dead on his chest, and then laid it off perfectly, proving that he's got a role in this team and he's not, shouldn't just be considered as a substitute. And Yun's strike was, it's just as clean as they come. He could not have hit it more perfectly. Possibly slightly against the run of play, but it was a goal of real high quality. Busan started the second half well, but thing is, I was watching this as a neutral. I don't really mind who wins this game, and being completely honest about it, I despite Busan starting the halfway, I never thought Ulsan were in much danger of conceding. And I mean, they did in the end. It finished 2-1, so they did concede, but that kind of came out of nowhere for me. But at 1-0, you could tell Ulsan weren't satisfied that they were going to see this out. They wanted to get another one, so they brought on Junior, and it wasn't to replace Johnson, it was to partner him. But within a couple of minutes, it was the opposite reaction to what they wanted, and they had conceded. Busan went straight up the other end from the sub, pretty much. He came on at a throw-in, they won the ball, went up the other end. It's a lovely little through ball from Homolu to Kim Hyun, who took a great touch. He was kind of like side onto the goal, and the ball was just a little bit behind him. He kind of scooped it round and then cut his shot back across goal to give them a surprise equaliser. I mean, I genuinely, as I just said, I thought Ulsan were in control, and I didn't see Busan getting the equaliser or going in to look like getting a winner. But fair play to them, they stuck at it and they did get the goal, but they could not hold on to it. And of course, it was Junior who got the goal. Johnson was heavily involved again. It was a really good header from a corner, and it was an excellent save from the keeper. And I've talked about them parrying the ball out into the danger area. There's nothing he could do about it. He just did very well to get anything on it to stop it going over the line. And that's when you need your defenders to help you out there as a keeper. You need them to be on their toes, to be ready for that. And they weren't. Junior was the first to react, stabbed into the empty net. It's not a coincidence he keeps getting goals which look really simple when you see them. It's his awareness of what's going on and his quick reactions that make these goals look like they're so simple. And it's got to be frustrating for Busan and for Busan fans that the defenders weren't alive to that second ball. Footballers talk about the second ball all the time, and Junior was the quickest to it, and that was that. It was 2-1 win.
Yeah, it was such a classic Junior goal. I mean, he can finish from all angles and all positions, but it was just I had that on the second screen and just looked up and saw an Ulsan player just kind of pick up that loose ball in the box first time, score a goal, and you don't even need to look. You just know it's going to be Junior with the goal.
Yeah, like you say, he's got more about his game than just that. He scores other goals too, but it's such a great way to grab goals for your team and also for your own personal tally. I mean, I have no idea how many he's got this season like that, but it's probably 4 or 5 just from being the quickest to react on second balls or from goalkeeper mistakes or something. And yeah, I mean, also on the top of the table because of him.
And for a striker who scores so many goals, he's quite an unselfish player as well. He's good at bringing other players into the play. I think it was the first game of the season where he could have had a hat trick, but he squared it for one of his teammates. He let Johnson take a penalty the other week, so he could be on 20 goals already, which would be remarkable, really.
Yeah, he really could be. He's really good player, and he's going to be player of the season already. You can just, if he isn't, then he should be.
So your final score there was Busan 1, Ulsan 2. Busan stay 7th. Up next for them, another tough matchup in Sangju, and Ulsan, of course, stay top. Right, how did we do with our predictions? Tom, you're being very consistent with your predictions. You got 3 again, so you're getting, apart from that blank in Gameweek 11, you've got 3s and 4s, and even a 5. So you're doing well. So 3 for you, and 3 for Yumi, and 2 for me. My form just seems to have dropped off a cliff. I'm just getting 2s every week now.
Had a run of 2s every week. Yeah, well, you did predict an Incheon win, so.
Yeah, that should have come off though. So I'm claiming a moral prediction point for that.
Well, it's brave anyway.
Yeah. So in terms of the league table, Ulsan first, of course, Jeonbuk second. Quite a bit of daylight there from in between them and Daegu. 7 points, in fact. Daegu and Sangju are level. And behind them, 1 point behind, is Pohang Steelers. And then another gap from them down to Gangwon. Gangwon are 8 points behind in 6th. Busan a point below them in 7th. And those two just can't seem to pull away from the teams in the bottom half, because Gwangju are only a point behind Busan. And then you've got Songnam, Suwon, and Seoul, and actually three points covering 6th to 11th. And then another gap down to Incheon, who are 8 points adrift. In terms of the Golden Boot race, not much change in that. Ulsan's Junior grabs another, so he goes on to 18. Pohang's Ilyachenko is still on 10. Daegu's Cecilia on 8. And then Gwangju's Felipe and Sangju's Kang Sang-woo on 7. Tom, any final thoughts from Game Week 14?
Yeah, I do, and it's going to be about goalkeepers again. And believe it or not, I don't actually enjoy laying into the keepers like this, but I think having watched a lot of the K-League in recent years, it really does lower the level of the league as a whole, how poor the goalkeepers are. I understand the Korean goalkeeper rule from the national team perspective, but is it actually working? It doesn't look like it to me. There hasn't been any huge improvement in the quality of goalkeepers. Say Cho Hyun-woo at Ulsan is the best of all of them. I think that's quite comfortable and quite easy to say that. He's makes the least amount of mistakes and has a bit of a presence. But in general, the keeping standard is really poor. And I don't really like comparing the K-League to the Premier League or the Championship, but I don't mind comparing it to some of the lower leagues in England. And so take Southend, for example, a team that you and I both watched. They had an absolutely awful season in League One, got relegated. They're going to be in League Two from next month. And other than Cho, would you want any of the other K-League goalkeepers playing for Southend in League Two next season, Martin?
Probably not in League Two, certainly the way lower league English football is. And I think what we seem to have in England, and I'm sure this happens in Germany and France as well, and Spain, you just have a plethora of kind of solid lower league journeyman goalkeepers who you can almost just kind of plug into a League Two team. But it doesn't really it still feels like you don't really have enough depth of goalkeeping talents in Korea. So, but yeah, there's a broader issue there with quotas versus merit, which is always an interesting discussion. Do you think the goalkeeper? I mean, surely the goalkeepers must be better off playing than not playing, or where else would they go? I suppose.
Well, yeah, that's probably the argument of why they don't allow foreign goalkeepers. But would then all these K1 keepers, bar one or two, would they all drop down to K2 teams? And then are they going to improve playing at that level, or would they then have to move abroad to go and play at other clubs? I don't know. I don't really have a solution to the question, but it takes away from the league as a whole when there are so many goalkeeping errors. And I mean, just going back to England with a bit of a comparison. All right, so we're saying one K-League goalkeeper could make it into the top 92 teams in England, but I think you take it down even further, and you're probably going down to the 120th, 130th teams, because I spent a lot of time this season watching my local team, Hampton and Richmond Borough, and they're in National League South. This is the 6th tier of English football. I had two goalkeepers over the course of the season. Both were loanees. One was from MK Dons and one was from Crystal Palace. So these are two goalkeepers. Maybe take the one from Palace away because they are a Premier League team. But the guy at MK Dons, Laurie Walker, he is not good enough to be their 5th or 6th keeper. He was loaned out. They had 3 goalkeepers on their books, and then they had a 4th keeper was a youngster, and he was deemed not even in that top 4 bracket. So they loaned him out. He is head and shoulders above every K-League keeper bar Cho at Ulsan. He would walk into the K-League, and it's the kind of thing that's like, well, I actually know him. I kind of tempted to send him a message, being like, you know what, why don't you, fancy a trip abroad? But then he realised, well, he couldn't get a game in the K-League, but he would walk into those sides. And this is a guy who then actually moved on from Hampton halfway through because Henry, the guy from Palace, came in to replace him. So he couldn't even get a game at National League South level. And I genuinely think he is better than 11 of the 12 goalkeepers in Korea. It is an issue. And for me, it does take away a little bit of enjoyment from the league when you see these ridiculous goals going in. I mean, you're new to it this season. What's been your impression of the goalkeeping?
I think a lot of it comes back to a lot of it seems to be that one error where they far too often they save the shot, but then just parry it back into the danger zone. And you mentioned Cho from Ulsan being the best, but even he did that last week against Sangju. I mean, Ulsan then scored 5 goals, so it didn't make a difference. But that seems to be the one for me. I mean, they not really notice any difference in terms of shot stopping ability. But it just seems to be that parrying the ball back into the danger zone, which presumably must be a coaching thing. So presumably you must be able to fix it. But I think overall, from my personal perspective, I think I just take it as it is really. There are good points, there are bad points. So I think at the beginning of the season, I think you suggested probably the standard is maybe kind of lower championship, upper League One. I think the players we're watching at the week out in K1 are more technically proficient. And I think the counter-attacking, which we mentioned, is fantastic in K1. A lot of shots from distance flying in. So it's swings and roundabouts, I think, for me.
Yeah, fair enough. It just is. It's a pet peeve of mine. I think seeing so many goalkeepers let balls go through their legs and just pushing them back out. And I also don't think they're particularly good at corners and free kicks, but there we go.
So that is our Game Week 14 recap and goalkeeper mini rants done. We'll come back after this for our Game Week 15 preview. Right, Game Week 15 starts off with a Friday game. Yay! FC Seoul at home to Gangwon. Friday Night Lights in K1. Seoul are in 11th. And in July, they only picked up 1 point, but in August, they've started off with a win. Gangwon are in 6th. They've had a win, 2 draws, and a loss in their last 4 games. This fixture earlier on in the season finished 3-1 to Gangwon when they met in Game Week 1. How do you see this one going, Tom?
I'm going to go with a draw for this. I think Seoul looks better versus Songnam than they have done in a while. Change at the helm seems to have helped them. Gangwon fought well today, so I wouldn't be surprised if they won it, but I think Seoul might be able to nick a point here.
Yeah, I'm going to go for a Seoul win here. Not really sure why, but Gangwon are a difficult team to pick, I think, in these predictions. Right, moving on to Saturday. Got 4 games on Saturday. Ulsan Hyundai versus Suwon Blue Wings. Ulsan in first. They equaled Jeonbuk's 5-game winning streak with their late victory over Busan. Suwon are in 10th. They played Daegu last week, or this weekend, I should say. Ulsan in game week 15, and then Jeonbuk the week after. You get the sense they might just be looking to just kind of get through these games, and then it's Incheon, Busan, and Seoul after that. It's got to be a home win, right, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. Suwon have improved the last couple of game weeks, but Ulsan are far too strong for them.
Home win for me too there.
Probably a little bit worrying to see what Edgar did to Henry, and you think, well, he's going to put Junior on him this time, who's bigger and stronger. So, yeah, I think Ulsan will get some goals.
Pohang Steelers at home to Gwangju FC. Pohang in 5th. They recorded their first loss in 7 versus Jeonbuk. Gwangju in 8th. And they recorded their first win in 7 versus Incheon. How's this one going?
Home win, Pohang win for this. There's a good effort for them with 10 men against Jeonbuk for a long time. I just can't see Gwangju troubling them at all. Well, no, that's not true. I can see Felipe troubling them from a corner. But other than that, I don't think Pohang will struggle.
Yeah, the old corners still worrying for Pohang. But yeah, you'd think Pohang have got enough firepower. I guess Palacios will be suspended, but Palacevic might be fit enough to start to start the game. So yeah, Pohang win for me. And then the game of the weekend, Daegu FC versus Jeonbuk FC. Daegu 3rd after their late win with 10 men against Suwon. Jeonbuk in 2nd, and then new signings Gustavo and Barrow, giving them a new bit of attacking impetus. Could go either way, this one.
It could do. I still like watching Daegu play, and I could see this as a draw, maybe. I think Daegu have got a chance here of winning this as well. I like the way they're playing. I think it'll be a close game, but despite what the heart is saying, the head is telling me that this is going to be a Jeonbuk away win, and definitely the game of the weekend.
Yeah, I've got Jeonbuk away win as well. Daegu, they just seem to be able to beat everybody else apart from the other teams in the top 5. So, whereas Jeonbuk have done that a couple of times. Right, moving on to Sunday. In fact, only 3 games on Saturday rather, not 4, because we've got 2 on Sunday. So we've got Sangju Sangmu versus Busan iPark. Sangju in 4th, a win, 2 draws and a loss in their last 4. Busan in 7th. Their nice run of form has tailed off with 2 losses, albeit against Daegu and Ulsan. Another quite tough one here, Tom, for Busan.
Yeah, I think it'll be tough for Busan. I'm going to go for a Sangju win, or Sangers, as you've started to call them, Martin. In your messages earlier to me today, it was Sangers versus Gangers. Yeah, so a Sangers win here. I thought Busan's first half performance, in particular against Ulsan, was pretty impressive. So they could, if they could do that for 90 minutes, they might be able to come away with a 0-0 or a 1-1. But they're not a high-scoring team. I don't have the stats, but I think I'm pretty accurate in saying that Busan aren't a particularly high-scoring team, and Sangju don't concede a huge amount. So I'm going to go with a home win.
I've got a feeling for a draw here. I think Sangju had that nice run of 4 1-0 wins, but just had a draw and a loss recently. So yeah, not sure. I just have a feeling with Sangju that at some point their form is going to tail off. It's a bit strange for them to be in 4th but still have negative goal difference, and those 1-0s. It's not really sustainable. So I'm feeling just at some point they're just going to drop out of the top 4. But yeah, draw, but we'll see how that goes.
Well, surely as Army boys, fitness is never going to be their issue.
No, nor should shooting either, but then they do seem to have a problem with it. Final game of the weekend, probably one that not many people will be tuning in. Potentially, it's the Tom Yumi derby. Incheon United versus Songnam FC. Incheon in 12th. Their mini unbeaten run came to an end, slightly surprisingly almost, or maybe not, against Gwangju. Songnam in 9th. I looked this up earlier. Yang Dong-hyun is still their top scorer in the league, and he hasn't scored since the beginning of June. He hasn't started the last 3 games. It finished 0-0 when they met in Gameweek 2. Could be a distinct possibility that happens again.
Yeah, would not be a surprise if this was a 0-0. I'm really tempted actually to drive over to New Malden and see Yumi and go and have lunch at her family's restaurant and watch this with her. I'm sure she'll have it on the TV there, and I could tuck into some Korean food. I might give that a bit of thought, and then we'll have to record this live from her restaurant instead of at our homes. It's a bit too far for you to come, I know, but I'm quite tempted to go and see Yumi next weekend. I mean, we all predicted Incheon to get something this week, and they let us all down, especially you two, with a win. So predicting anything from Incheon is a risk, but I can't do it. Songnam win.
Yeah, I've gone for a Songnam win here as well. It was just such a deflating loss, or maybe that was just me. Maybe the players were all right, but yeah, it's going to be low scoring, and I think Songnam might just edge it. Right, well, that's our Game Week 14 pod done and dusted. Tom, thank you very much. Kamsahamnida.
Kamsahamnida.
Kamsahamnida to you too, listener. You can stay up to speed with us on social media at Gazzetta Korea on Twitter. We're also on YouTube, where we put the video version of these podcasts, and we're on Facebook as well. If I remember to put the links on Facebook, that is. In the meantime, stay subscribed to the podcast, and we look forward to catching up with you next weekend for some more K-League action.